Morning. How are you? Good morning. Okay, where's my flag? Please be seated. Please. Sorry? Thank you.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Director General, WTO. Your Excellency, Ambassador Adamu Abdulhamid, our Ambassador of the WTO, the Permanent Secretary and Directors of the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, representatives of MDAs here present, members of the enlarged National Focal Point on Trade Matters, gentlemen of the press, a very good morning to you all. It is a pleasure to welcome the Director General of the WTO to the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment on behalf of the Federal Government of Nigeria. We truly appreciate the Director General's visit here and would like to specifically thank her for the warm reception she accorded to the Nigerian delegation when we were in Geneva for the MC12. Let me also use this opportunity to commend the Director General for her leadership and tenacity that led to the positive outcomes of the recently concluded MC12. The outcomes of this just completed ministerial conference have been rightly described as unprecedented. This is a testament, Madam Director General, to your visionary leadership, which you provided in your capacity as the first female, first African DG of that organization. Ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria welcomes the outcomes of the MC12, and we note the great progress that MC12 made. We note, however, that we must not rest on our oars, but should take this success as a sign that with the right leadership, a lot can be done, and we must build on this momentum to make progress in all other outstanding areas of work at the WTO. Let me just inform that on return from Geneva, I immediately notified Mr. President about the outcomes of the Ministerial Conference. That is in my communication to him on Monday, 20th June. And we're in the process of preparing a council note to inform members of the Federal Executive Council of the outcomes and steps that need to be taken to ensure timely and effective implementation of these outcomes. MC12 also had a lot of national media coverage, and we thank the press for that, including daily updates during the conference and appearances immediately after the conference, including on Good Morning Nigeria, on Tuesday, 28th June, 2022. I've also transmitted immediately the decisions to the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development on 8th of July to prep the ministry for further action in this regard. In the meantime, the enlarged National Focal Point on Trade Matters, which is an interministerial committee set up by government to consider and advise on trade matters, has held 2 meetings, I understand. One was held yesterday, to debrief stakeholders about the outcomes of MC12. And this committee has advised on steps to be taken to ensure these outcomes are not just effectively implemented, but are felt by the generality of Nigerian people. Among the raft of decisions reached, the ministry, in collaboration with relevant stakeholders, have met to specifically consider the agreement on fisheries subsidies and deliberated on how Nigeria can implement the agreement while also taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the newly created WTO Fish Fund. The outcome of this stakeholders meeting and the requirements of Nigeria on the WTO Fish Fund are as follows, and I'll just highlight a few. During our discussion, we'll go into depth. One is the need for technical assistance in the determination of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. This could include assistance in developing appropriate domestic regime, training in enforcement, training domestic fishermen, and ensuring an ability to take appropriate action with respect to foreign fishermen operating in Nigerian waters. 2, capacity building to carry out stock assessment. This is important to build the capacity of relevant institutions, ministries, colleges of fisheries in the determination of overfished stock in the Nigerian waters based on best scientific evidence, which would also trigger the prohibition in Article 4 of the said agreement. 3, developing capacity in the calculation of biologically sustainable level for a stock and the demonstration that subsidies will promote sufficient stock rebuilding. 4, technical assistance in the development of fisheries management program that maintains stocks at sustainable levels. 5, assist in the development of data-based solutions for issues being faced by traditional fishing industries, both large and small scale. And we are emphasizing data-based solutions, not just one-off people thinking that these are the issues. Next, assistance in the integration of cutting-edge technology in fisheries data collection. This is connected to the earlier issue. Next is building capacity in the improvement of fisheries monitoring and landing site management to reduce post-harvest losses. Furthermore, we require technical assistance to address the weaknesses in technical knowledge among the staff of the Fisheries Department, the Nigerian Institute of Oceanography and Marine Research, and the Federal College of Fisheries and Marine Technology, as well as local fishing communities. This would enable capacity, this would build capacity to ensure that fishing is done in a sustainable level. Also, we're looking at the issues of fishing sensors and also research and fund for participation in ongoing negotiations. Madam Director General, the Agreement on Fisheries Subsidies sets new global rules to curb harmful subsidies and protect global fish stocks in a manner that also recognizes the needs of fishermen in developing and least developed countries. Among its key features is sustainability of the environment, which is a first for WTO agreements. Furthermore, the above technical assistance and capacity building needs are essential for Nigeria to implement the agreement while also enhancing environmental sustainability. And we believe this agreement is a milestone, a great milestone, because it's going to enhance food security and increase source of livelihood, particularly for lower income families in rural and coastal areas. Let me also assure you that Nigeria will take all the necessary steps for the acceptance of the protocol and depositing the instrument of ratification. I've already started this discussion with the Honorable Minister of Agric and Rural Development so that we're able, working with Ministry of Justice, to quickly submit this to the Federal Executive Council for ratification. Now, Nigeria would also engage constructively with the membership of the WTO towards extending MC12 decisions on the TRIPS agreement to cover the production and supply of COVID-19 diagnostics and therapeutics as envisaged under paragraph 8 of the said decision. We'll also be playing a constructive role in the negotiations on fisheries subsidies, as I've already mentioned. Now, let me also use this opportunity to draw your attention, Your Excellency, to our capacity difficulties, which continue to undermine our effective participation in the multilateral trading system. While we acknowledge the capacity building efforts of the WTO around training of officers on international trade governance, the need for more targeted technical assistance from the WTO cannot be overemphasized. The needed assistance includes WTO-funded national programs, which may comprise workshops on the implementation of the covered agreements. We're also in need of assistance to Nigerian universities in the field of trade policy research and other technical assistance programs offered by the WTO. Finally, I wish to assure Your Excellency of Nigeria's continued support. I have directed the Nigeria Trade Office in Geneva to continue to engage constructively with the WTO membership and spare no effort in supporting you as you strive to transform and reposition the WTO. And I think at this point that I mentioned our office in Geneva, I want to congratulate the ambassador for the wonderful job done. I've actually asked that, directed that a letter of commendation should be sent to Ambassador Abdulhamid for the excellent work that he did to support the delegation and the support that he's giving the WTO. In conclusion, Madam Director General, I wish to thank you for taking time off your very busy schedule to visit Nigeria and visit this ministry. I would also like to assure you that Nigeria will be proactive in the negotiations that will lead to the development of a more comprehensive submission to ministers at the next 13th Ministerial Conference. I wish you every success in piloting the affairs of the WTO and a very successful visit to Nigeria, which is our home. I thank you very much for coming. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I didn't know that the MC12 and follow-up had been so extensively covered. I did see one or two clips that the ambassador sent to me, but I'm delighted to hear that because I was not aware. So thanks also to the press for doing that because it's quite important. Now the actions to be taken, I'll try to be clearer. I want to talk about one. In the area of fisheries, the first thing Nigeria needs to do is to do what is called the deposit of its instrument of acceptance. That means that this agreement, Nigeria has to do the legal work to accept it. And it is very detailed, so like I said, I brought some of the guidance. So I don't want to go into the legal details, but it may not be that complicated. Sometimes, depending on the legal framework of the country, it could just be an administrative order from Mr. President. It could be that we may need to go to the National Assembly. I'm not yet sure in the case of Nigeria, but we have to look at what instrument. It need not take time. And that is why I'm here to urge that this be done quickly. And we're trying to urge all the countries to do it because we need 2/3 of countries to deposit the instruments of acceptance for the agreement to come into effect. When it comes into effect, it means that if you catch people doing unreported and unregulated fishing, they can be brought to the WTO has a dispute settlement system, and that's what many members don't want to be brought there for not obeying the rules. So that's the deterrent. It's the only one of its kind that for the world that exists. We are trying to reform it, but it's functioning. And countries don't want to be brought there by other countries. So we need to get this done. So that's the first action, deposit of the instrument of acceptance. And from what I understand, I think the work has already even started. They're thinking about how to do it. So I'm very happy about that. The timeline for doing this that I've said to WTO members, it usually takes 2 to 3 years for many agreements. And I've said no, we're going to try and do this in 6 to 9 months. Why is that? Because as we speak, as you mentioned from NTA, our waters are being depleted. So we need to act fast to stop that. But the agreement actually deals with unregulated fishing, illegal fishing, and unreported fishing. So it's a very good agreement in saying you cannot subsidize this kind of fishing. We've got numbers on the subsidies. So countries or members who are doing that have to stop because the agreement now does not allow that. And if they are caught doing this fishing, they can be brought before the WTO dispute settlement system. So other actions, that's on fish. Following that, the second action I think will be important is for us to put forward our request for capacity building. Part of this agreement talks about helping members WTO members manage their capacity, fisheries management capacity. And we know that we have issues and gaps. So the next action is to really put forward a project document, a request for the kinds of areas in which Nigeria needs this capacity building. And we heard the Honorable Minister outline, I think it was 7 areas where the thinking has already gone. So putting that together and being forward in terms of saying we are ready will even help us push the completion of the fund so that we can start being able to help countries. So that's a second action. And implementation, the government will have to also set up its own mechanisms to monitor what is going on. But equally at the WTO, we will be monitoring how countries are implementing the agreement and what they are doing. We ask countries to report on, you will see that in the agreement there are some what we call transparency and reporting requirements that every country will have to meet on their fisheries management and what they are doing, and they will have to report it to the WTO. That's why the capacity building is necessary, because some of it can be quite technical, and so that's the other thing we have to do. So for fisheries, you get the idea. Very specific things are required. On the TRIPS waiver, the decision is immediate. So there's nothing to be done. Any country that has manufacturing capacity now can use its legal instrument that is available to override the patent and be able to have access to those patents and manufacture those vaccines. So we are trying in Nigeria to build up a manufacturing capacity for vaccines. I know the Ministry of Health is working on this, so we just need to speed up. The agreement is available over the next 5 years, so we should do that, and we're trying to extend it to therapeutics and diagnostics. So that's another action. On the food side, what we try to do is to say that to ask our members to respect some of our rules that require us to minimize export restrictions and prohibitions and make them transparent. Even if you have them, they have to be for very limited duration, because they cause food prices to rise even higher when countries restrict the export of food or inputs like fertilizer or improved seeds. So that's what the WTO can do, to try not to be part of the problem. We are not an agency that finances agriculture, so we don't finance, but we try to make sure that our members don't add to the problem by allowing the free flow of trade in food and agricultural products. And that's what we're able to do at this ministerial, to get members to agree that they will limit that impact. Now we work with other organizations. For example, I'm happy to say that our brother, President Aki Adesina of African Development Bank, has put aside $1.5 billion to help countries improve their agriculture. We work with him, we work with the World Bank, with the International Finance Corporation, and others. There is also an initiative of the EU, the European Union, to help with increased production in countries. We are working with all of them to help point out where are the gaps, where countries have problems, so that they can also put their money to support that. Now, with respect to the issue on insecurity, of course, I mean, you cannot farm if you don't have the security to do that. But that is not something that is within the remit of the WTO. So I'm afraid that we can help with many things, but that particular one will have to be handled internally. So let me leave it there.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the DG has said it all, but I just need to emphasize one or two things. The important role of the enlarged national focal point on trade matters, because a lot is going to be required of this particular body. Just for clarity, this is a body interministerial, and it is chaired by the permanent secretary of the ministry, and the vice chair is the Director General of the National Office for Trade Negotiations. Now, the import of this committee is the responsibility it puts on several MDAs that are members to take away immediately, even from this meeting. The briefing needs to get up to your principals so that your own areas of concern, although there are areas that are overlapping, you give it priority attention. That is why, for example, without waiting for any other thing, I immediately sent the decisions on agric, and I spoke to my colleague that this is somewhere where we need to work together. The Ministry of Justice is going to look at it and determine whether this is something that just needs a signature, is something that needs to go to the National Assembly to be passed as a bill, because there are 3 ways we can do this. He will advise us, and we'll set our own timelines to enable the speedy ratification. So the enlarged national focal point has a lot of responsibility. It's going to have responsibility in terms of implementation, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, and feedback to the system. I will not know what's happening in the Nioma, for example, unless through the enlarged national focal point. So there's a lot of emphasis on this. As far as we're concerned, the speed with which we're going to work on this, I am someone that I don't like keeping too many pots on the fire for too long. I want to finish whatever I'm cooking and move on to the next dish, okay? So I am going to be very much breathing down their necks, because there are certain things that if you don't do them with the urgency, we prepared for MC12. As I said, we triggered that enlarged national focal point had not met for several years. We woke it up from sleep. We set up a mechanism, and they're going to be meeting every month. Now they've met twice within a month. They're going to meet a bit more often until certain key milestones have been achieved. So I just want to assure you that on M&E, a lot is going to happen. And definitely we have the support of Mr. President on what we're doing. And we're going to look at areas of linkages, particularly agriculture. There's a Green Imperative project that I know that's coming up. That is something that is going to create food security for the country, in such that we may not just be food secure, we may be able to supply both food and fertilizer to other countries of the world. I think the last area that I wanted to talk about is, the urgency of now. You see, we were all very pleased. Personally, I was pleased that the WTO has seen a change with the coming of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. I'm used to the multilateral system, but when I got there, I asked her, I said, oh my God, is this how you take decisions in the WTO? Because you are here trying to convince your colleagues. On the next level, somebody has just completely unraveled all the agreements. We go back and forth, and there is this famous room of the DG, the green room. This is where the DG locks us in and says, until we resolve the problems, we cannot leave. And mainly it will be countries that have extreme views on a particular issue, but also countries that are seen to be to provide some leadership. Yes. So Nigeria was invited. Nigeria, along with several countries, were always meeting in this green room. And that is where I saw also, and I know the DG agrees with me, where we took hours, if not days, arguing on a word in a footnote, of a major article. Footnote, not the article itself. So a lot of work has happened, and really, again, to congratulate the DG. I think the meeting ended 5:30 in the morning. Of this thing, but I think by that 5:30, a lot of us ministers said, look, we've had it, we've done our work, and the rest of the work could be handled. So thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies of the press, if any. So I think at this point, Madam Kemi, maybe the press would excuse us so that we start.
Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I think we have concluded the interview session with Her Excellency.
Fantastic. Ashoke. Fantastic.
This is all part of our Made in Nigeria for Broadcasting.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so
Beautiful Ashoke.